It was meant to be funny. But what Meghan Markle delivered was something else entirely. A bold parody aimed at her former Netflix bosses turned into a career-defining disaster. What began as satire quickly spiraled into scandal, leaving executives fuming, her team in chaos, and Hollywood wondering if Meghan had finally gone too far. It all began with a smirk behind the scenes. While most expected Meghan Markle to part ways with Netflix quietly, dignified, and distant, she had other plans. Not an elegant retreat, but a theatrical exit. Not a thank you to fans, but a bold strike at the very executives who had just turned the page on her contract. Inside the walls of Netflix headquarters, where billion-dollar content deals are made with hushed voices and polished smiles, a different kind of storm was brewing, and its source was a woman who had once been their prized partner. Rather than moving on with grace after her show's troubled second season limped toward cancellation, Meghan orchestrated a project that stunned even her own inner circle. She created a parody sketch, not a simple Instagram reel, not a playful behind-the-scenes montage, but a fully staged, professionally edited skit designed to mock the people who had once funded her vision. She portrayed her own firing like a comedy roast, acting out exaggerated arguments between the executives, tossing out absurd show ideas, and repeatedly casting herself as the misunderstood creative genius being shoved aside. The punchline, again and again, painted Netflix as incompetent and Meghan as the only one with vision. Yet beneath the humor was something far sharper. A veiled accusation that Netflix had sabotaged her success. The footage, polished to perfection, was reportedly days away from being posted on her personal Instagram. Edited with care, lit professionally, soundtracked with comedic timing. But, for all its gloss and polish, it held the weight of something much heavier. A message. A warning. Perhaps even a threat. Meghan believed it would land as witty rebellion. A woman unafraid to speak truth to power. She thought it might even trend. Her team, however, didn't see satire. They saw fire. And they knew exactly how close she was to burning every bridge in the building. What followed was not laughter. It was fury. Netflix executives didn't chuckle. They didn't smile at the parody. They watched, stone-faced, as Meghan performed their own downfall as slapstick. Behind closed doors, the decision was made swiftly. Meghan would be contacted, not with congratulations, but with consequences. She was warned in no uncertain terms. If that video went live before her contract officially ended, legal action would follow. Immediate, public, and unforgiving. Netflix didn't see a skit. They saw a warning shot. What they feared most wasn't the laughter. It was the silence that followed. Because in that silence came the realization that Meghan Markle wasn't just leaving a company. She was burning a bridge. And the entire industry had just seen the first spark. What really shook the Netflix board wasn't just the skit. It was how deep Meghan was willing to go with it. Behind those exaggerated outfits and goofy impressions, there was a message. A very clear one. She wasn't just mocking the company, she was reframing the entire situation, spinning her own downfall as a misunderstood genius moment. And it hit a nerve, because they knew she wasn't joking. At least, not entirely. In the same video, Meghan didn't just play the executives. She played herself post-firing, marching into the Netflix boardroom like a boss, declaring herself the new CEO, rewriting the company's entire content strategy. At one point, she joked about canceling every show that wasn't hers, mocking popular series as generic Netflix filler. It was a fever dream of what she probably wished would happen. But to everyone else, it was just plain delusional. The wildest part, she genuinely thought this video would help her. That it would paint her as bold, unbothered, and funny. That people would rally behind her for being real and sticking it to the execs. But in Hollywood, where every move is calculated, this wasn't bravery. It was seen as career suicide. Word spread quickly. Calls between studios and agencies were being made before she even knew the full fallout had begun. Inside Netflix, panic turned to strategy. This wasn't just a talent issue. It was a brand protection problem. Greg Peters reportedly told staff in a closed-door meeting that allowing this kind of behavior to go unchecked would send the wrong message. If they let Meghan's skit slide, what would stop every disgruntled creator from airing their dirty laundry through parody? So the axe came down hard, not just on her press tour, but on everything surrounding her show. Marketing budgets weren't just cut, they were nuked. Posters were pulled from locations, ads were canceled, promotion slots were given to other shows. It was like with Love, Meghan never existed. Internally, staffers were told to stop discussing the show unless absolutely necessary. Meghan, meanwhile, was spiraling. She'd gone from being Netflix's pet project to a full-on liability. And even though she tried to act unfazed publicly, insiders said she was calling around frantically trying to figure out how to do damage control. She told friends that Netflix was overreacting, that the sketch was lighthearted commentary, but nobody was buying it. The biggest blow? Her own team backing away. Her manager stopped returning calls for days. Her agent quietly removed her from the agency's active promotion list. Publicists that once scrambled to book her were now suddenly unavailable. And just like that, the phone stopped ringing. One producer who had worked on the show from the beginning said it felt like watching a slow-motion car crash. They described Meghan as someone who couldn't read the room, who believed her version of events so deeply, she was blind to how it looked from the outside. And when Netflix clapped back, it wasn't just personal, it was professional. It was about showing they wouldn't be held hostage by someone's ego, no matter how famous they were. And while Meghan was scrambling behind the scenes, Greg and Ted were locking things down. Every appearance, every panel, every interview tied to her name was being cut from the lineup. They weren't taking chances anymore. Meghan had become a wild card, and Netflix wasn't interested in playing games. But Meghan wasn't done. If anything, the pushback only fueled her. She started making plans to post the video anyway after her contract ended. Meghan's plan now was simple. Wait out the clock. Then drop the video like a digital grenade. She figured once her contract officially ended, Netflix would lose any legal power to stop her. And technically, she wasn't wrong. But she underestimated how fast the industry could close doors when it feels betrayed. Behind the scenes, she was already laying the groundwork. Contacts were being tapped. She reached out to a couple of independent producers, looking for someone to help amplify the sketch when it went live. She even floated the idea of turning the parody into a full-blown miniseries for Instagram, mocking not just Netflix but Hollywood in general. She thought it would be edgy, viral, disruptive. Everyone else thought it sounded like a meltdown in slow motion. The reaction from the industry was swift and cold. Streaming platforms, already wary of controversy, began distancing themselves from her name. Talent agencies put out quiet warnings to their clients. No collaborations, no cosigns. Meghan had gone from being a tricky client to a flat-out risk. One executive bluntly called her uninsurable. Even talk show hosts who'd once welcomed her were rethinking everything. Jimmy Kimmel's team, who had prepped a light segment featuring clips from With Love, Meghan, scrapped it entirely. The Fallon booking? Gone. Seth Meyers had a tentative sit-down on the calendar. Without explanation, it vanished. No one wanted to be the outlet that gave her a platform to escalate the situation. But Meghan wasn't retreating. She leaned harder into her online presence. Her team began teasing vague statements about creative freedom and the importance of satire in media. A few cryptic Instagram stories started popping up. Her face half-lit set to dramatic music. Phrases like, "The truth always finds the light," and "You can silence a contract, not a voice." It was the kind of buildup you'd expect before a controversial documentary dropped. Meanwhile, the blowback was affecting more than just her career. People working on With Love, Meghan started losing jobs. Some were quietly let go as the marketing budget vanished. Others had post-production gigs canceled mid-contract. Editors, assistants, stylists, all left hanging because the show had turned radioactive. One crew member said they felt burned for being too close to the fire. And it wasn't just Netflix that was done. Spotify had already parted ways with Meghan months prior. But even that relationship started resurfacing in a new light. Insiders from the streaming platform leaked details about how Meghan had clashed with producers, missed deadlines, and demanded unreasonable levels of control over even the smallest details. People started connecting the dots. This wasn't just a Netflix issue. It was a pattern. Still, Meghan held on to the hope that the sketch would change the narrative. That once people saw her side, her version of the story, they'd understand. Maybe even sympathize. But no matter how she spun it, the timing couldn't have been worse. Public opinion was lukewarm at best. The audience she'd once carefully curated with charity speeches and podcasts now saw someone unraveling in real time. And in Hollywood, perception is everything. By the end of August, her legal team had received a formal letter from Netflix's lawyers. No lawsuit yet, but a very clear warning.